Wetin you go do if the people wey you kill refuse to stay dead?
Take the curse back. I only raided the village for gold. I didn't know the blood of the innocent would stick to my flesh like fire. Those were the agonizing, choked screams of Bamidele as he clawed at his hands, trying to rub the glowing stains into the dirt. But the midnight air offered no comfort. The blind grandmother did not speak, but slowly tipped her calabash, pouring a single drop of water that hissed like a snake as it touched his skin. A sound of distant, weeping children echoed directly out of Bamidele's own chest, reminding him that when you trade human lives for blood money, the dead will eventually come to claim the change. My people, entering the forest of wickedness is easy, but the road back is often guarded by the ghost of your choices. Bamidele thought his guns and blades made him untouchable. He did not know that the quietest villages carry the oldest protection. Sit down, turn off your lights, and listen with your soul. Because this is the story of the day the earth refused to bury the wicked. In the fertile lands of Ilu-Ofe, life was gentle. But inside the chest of the village blacksmith, Bamidele, lived a wild, raging fire of greed. Bamidele was a master of his craft, capable of forging tools that could cut through the toughest wood. Yet, he hated his sweat. He looked at his calloused hands and cursed his poverty, furious that he had to work from dawn until dusk just to buy a single bag of grain, while the village chiefs lived in luxury. Over time, Bamidele's envy rotted into absolute hatred for his own people. He began to listen to dark whispers from travelers about the Red Masks, the notorious group of ruthless forest bandits who raided distant communities, stealing gold and leaving nothing but ashes behind. Driven by a desperate hunger to become a master of his own destiny, Bamidele did the unthinkable. He used his furnace secretly at night, not to forge farming hoes, but to create deadly machetes and iron bullets. He abandoned his shop, packed a single bag, and walked into the forbidden deep forest, offering his skills and his soul to the leader of the bandits. He stripped himself of his village name and became a ghost of the wild. For 2 years, Bamidele thrived in wickedness, rising to become the most feared commander of the Red Masks. He forgot the face of mercy, leading brutal raids across the valley. But his ultimate test arrived when the bandit king called him into a hidden cave lit by bone torches. The leader pointed to a map of the territory and delivered a cold command: the neighboring villages are dry. Tomorrow night, we raid the wealthiest unhatched egg in the valley. We raid Ilu-Ofe. Burn everything, kill anyone who resists, and bring me the golden staff of the traditional stool. Bamidele's heart leaped into his throat. He stared at the map, realizing he was being ordered to destroy his own birthplace, the very ground where his family was buried. Before he could speak, the cave entrance collapsed from a sudden, unexplained mudslide, trapping them in pitch darkness with the sound of a woman laughing softly from the shadows. A wicked heart always mistakes a temporary victory for a permanent blessing. The raid on Ilu-Ofe was absolute and terrifying. The bandits struck at midnight when the village was fast asleep. Bamidele led the attack with a cold, mechanical cruelty, hiding his face behind a red leather mask so no one would recognize him. By the 3rd hour of the morning, Bamidele sat on the village chief's carved throne in the middle of the burning square, surrounded by mountains of wealth. He had successfully stolen the golden staff, chest of silver, and bags of precious coral beads. The very chiefs who used to ride past his blacksmith shop without looking at him were now bound in ropes at his feet, weeping for their lives. Bamidele felt a surge of unholy power. His poverty was dead. He was now wealthier than any man in the clan's history. He ordered his men to pack the stolen treasure into heavy wooden carts, preparing to retreat into the deep forest to live like a king in their hidden paradise. But the universe does not allow a thief to enjoy the harvest of blood without a price. As Bamidele raised his machete to signal the final retreat, the heavy smoke in the square suddenly gathered into a tight, unnatural column. Out from the burning ruins of the village shrine walked an old, blind grandmother, the custodian of the earth's ancient laws. She didn't run, and she didn't weep. She walked straight through the line of armed bandits, who found themselves mysteriously frozen, unable to pull their triggers. She stopped exactly 3 paces from Bamidele, raised her withered hand, and touched his bare wrist. A sudden, blinding flash of blue light exploded between them, and the blind woman whispered, "You have stolen the gold of the living, Bamidele. Now, you must carry the weight of the dead." Instantly, the ground beneath the treasure carts liquefied into quicksand, swallowing all the stolen gold into the dark earth before his very eyes, leaving behind a deep, bottomless hole that began to whistle with the voices of the slain. My people, when the earth decides to hunt a man, no forest is deep enough to hide him. Bamidele and his surviving men fled back to their hidden jungle camp, empty-handed and terrified. The gold was gone, but the blind woman's touch had left a mark that could not be undone. The first red flag appeared that very afternoon. Bamidele went to the forest stream to wash the soot from his hands. But the moment his fingers broke the surface, the clear water instantly turned into thick, curdled human blood. No matter where he walked along the river, the water refused to cleanse him. Soon, a deep, rotting paranoia took over his mind. Every night, the forest turned into a courtroom. Whenever Bamidele closed his eyes, he didn't hear the rustling of leaves, he heard the distinct, synchronized footsteps of hundreds of people walking in circles around his tent. His men began to look at him with suspicion, whispering that their commander had brought a village curse into the camp. Bamidele grew wild, executing his own soldiers out of fear, believing they were plotting to kill him. He became trapped in a prison of his own making, refusing to sleep, his eyes bloodshot, listening to the walls of the cave whisper his true name over and over again. The horror reached its peak on the 3rd night of his isolation. Bamidele was sitting by the campfire, holding his breath, trying to block out the sounds of the jungle. Suddenly, the fire turned from orange to a cold, ghostly blue. He looked down and gasped in absolute terror. The skin on his hands was beginning to peel away, and underneath, his flesh was glowing with that same eerie blue light he saw in the village square. As he stared, his own chest began to thumping violently, and the clear, distinct voice of a young child he had harmed during the raid spoke directly out of Bamidele's own mouth, "Commander, why did you burn our roof?" Bamidele screamed, drawing his pistol and firing wildly into the dark corners of the cave, only for the bullets to ricochet off the stone and pierce his own shadow, causing the shadow to bleed real blood onto the cave floor. Desperation will force a wicked man to seek mercy from the very altar he desecrated. Unable to bear the voices inside his own throat, Bamidele abandoned the bandit camp. He ran through the thorny jungle like a wild beast, his glowing blue hands illuminating the dark path. He knew there was only one way to break the curse. He had to find the blind grandmother and force her to take the spell back, even if he had to cut it out of her. He burst into the ruins of Ilu-Ofe just before midnight. The village was a ghost town, smelling of wet soot and old death. He ran straight to the center of the square where the earth had swallowed his gold. There, sitting calmly on a charred wooden stool, was the blind grandmother, waiting for him. Bamidele fell to his knees, his mind completely broken. He pointed his trembling machete at her throat, demanding that she silence the voices in his chest and wash the blue fire from his flesh. He threatened to slaughter her right there if she didn't restore his life and give him back his stolen wealth. But the old woman simply smiled, a look of profound, ancestral sorrow on her face, and said, "You cannot threaten the ground you are already standing inside, Bamidele. Look down at your feet." Bamidele looked down, and a cold sweat broke over his entire body. He wasn't standing on top of the soil anymore. The mud had crept up to his knees while he was talking, holding him tight like set mortar. The blue fire on his hands began to spread rapidly up his arms, turning his leather armor into ash. The voices of the slain villagers inside his chest grew into a deafening chorus, singing a traditional burial song that made the very stones of the square vibrate. He tried to raise his machete to strike the woman, but his arm had completely turned into solid, cold iron, the very metal he used to forge weapons of destruction. Before he could utter a final cry, the blind grandmother raised her wooden calabash and poured the river water onto his head, signaling the ultimate judgment of the soil. Which brings us back to that stormy midnight in the village square, my people. Bamidele's cries were swallowed by the wind as the ancient laws of the earth took their final shape. He wanted to use iron to build a kingdom of blood, so the earth made him an eternal monument of his own wickedness. The blue fire consumed his flesh, but it didn't burn him to ash. Instead, it hardened him, fusing his bones, his anger, and his greed into a massive, solid iron statue of a kneeling bandit commander, his face forever frozen in a scream of terror, staring down at his caked hands. The next morning, the surviving villagers who had fled into the mountains returned to Ilu-Ofe. When they entered the square, they didn't find the bandits or the ashes of defeat. The earth had performed a miracle. Out from the very ground around the iron statue, fresh green grass, heavy yams, and clean water springs had burst forth, restoring the fertility of the land overnight. The stolen gold was never found, but the village was blessed with a harvest that would last for generations. The iron statue of Bamidele remained in the center of the market. A permanent reminder to all travelers that anyone who brings violence to the innocent will eventually be used by the earth to fertilize the peace of the righteous. My people, Bamidele's name became a heavy weight in the history of the valley, a warning that wealth acquired through the tears and blood of others will always turn into a chain that drags you into the dust. How many of us are like Bamidele in our world today? How many people are willing to join hands with destroyers, pull down their own communities, betray their friends, or cause pain to the innocent just to build a quick mountain of gold? We chase after fortune with blood on our fingers, forgetting that the universe sees every hidden act, and that the ground we walk on never forgets the cries of the broken. Take a close look at the tools you are forging in your daily life. Ensure that your success is built on the blessings of honest labor, not on the destruction of another person's roof. Because when the night falls and the ancestors call for account, your gold will hide in the dirt, and you will be left alone to face the weight of your choices. If the story of the bandit killings shook your soul tonight, then you already know this channel is your true home. Hit that subscribe button right now, and turn on your notification bell so you never miss our weekly journeys into the deep wisdom of our fathers. Leave me a comment below and tell me, do you believe Bamidele's transformation into iron was a fair judgment, or did the earth show him too much severity? I read and reply to every single comment. Until the next story, stay safe, stay wise, and remember that no shield can protect a man from his own conscience. See you in the next one. Bye for now.